Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and joining us tonight. Thanks to all of you who are joining us online as well. My name is Matt Donovan. I'm the director of the Boutelle-Day Poetry Center here at Smith. It is such a joy to have Kay Iver here on campus to read for us. I was saying over dinner that, yes. That is how I have been feeling. I first met Kay a year ago at AWP, and I should read my prepared remarks, but I have been feeling exactly that way for the last year, waiting to get Kay here to Smith. We're so excited to have Kay here. I first met Kay at the book fair of the annual AWP Writing Conference when we were introduced by a mutual friend. And if you don't know, the AWP Writing Conference, each year, it brings together around 10,000 writers and other folks connected to the publishing industry. It is not always a pleasant experience. It can be a place of community and an opportunity to discover new voices at its massive book fair. And it can also be a place where one feels adrift and overwhelmed. But Kay and I had a great conversation there within that sea of noise. And right afterwards, I hurried off to find their book, short film starring my beloved's Red Bronco. And I don't know if you've ever had that moment where you open a book for the first time and immediately feel the singular presence of a writer's voice. But that's what I felt standing there in the book fair, reading Kay's work as the quiet urgency of their poems cut through all of that book fair noise. And now, here we are together in a different moment that also feels quite overwhelming, albeit for far different reasons. And it's also filled with so much brutal daily noise. And by noise, I mean a willful chaos and brazen cruelty and ongoing codification of fear and hatred towards the trans and non-binary communities who are now under heightened threat. So Kay, I think we're all so grateful that you are here to help carve out some space with your words. Welcome. I have just a few quick announcements, and I will get out of the way as soon as possible because I'm as excited as you are to hear Kay read. So in a few minutes, I'll turn things over to Rio de Guzman, who will be introducing Kay tonight. And following Kay's reading, they'll be in conversation with Joan Kwon Glass right here, an illustrious Smith College alum who will also be reading in our series next year. So stay tuned for that next December, I believe. After their conversation, Kay will be signing copies of their book right over there, and Joan's book is also for sale in the back, and I have no doubt Joan would be very happy to also sign copies of their book for you as well. And also, I say this every time, but I mean it sincerely, given what an amazing person Kay is. Even if you don't buy a book, just come up and say hi, say hello. Kay would love to meet you, and we'll be sitting right there at that purple tablecloth. The Boutelle-Day Poetry Center is really proud to have the following co-sponsors for tonight's event: the Office for Equity and Inclusion and the Program for the Study of Women, Gender, and Sexuality. Thank you as always to Tom Clytus, who is streaming tonight's event. English one, end of the event, the QR codes. Please just remember to sign in so I know you're here. If you have any issues, please check in with me or with Emma. Please remember to silence your cell phones. I also just want to let you know about some additional readings that we're hosting even this week. So tomorrow afternoon on Wednesday, March 5th at 4:30 in the Boutelle-Day Poetry Center, Justin Cameo will be holding a book launch for Elephants by Night, a translated collection of poems by Abraham Sutzkever. So please come to that event. And then on Thursday evening, March 6th at 7 o'clock in the Poetry Center, the poet and translator John Hennessy from just over the river at UMass will be reading from their new collection of poems. And then also, even more importantly, we'll be reading from translations of contemporary Ukrainian poetry. And John has said he definitely feels like he wants to lean into that side of the evening and read Ukrainian poetry for us. So please come to that if you can. And if you are not on our mailing list but would like to be added, you can just sign a QR code in the back or sign up via our QR code in the back. And we'd love to have you know about all the future events we have coming up at the Poetry Center. It is now my pleasure to give you the bios of Rio de Guzman and Joan Kwon Glass. Joan Kwon Glass is a diasporic Korean poet, a Smith College alum, class of 1998, and author of Daughter of Three Gone Kingdoms, which just won last year the Perugia Press Poetry Prize, as well as Night Swim, winner of the Diode Book Prize. Her poems have been featured or are forthcoming in Poetry, The Slowdown, Passages North, Poetry Daily, Torrin, Poetry Northwest, the Homa Literary Review, Prairie Schooner, and many other places elsewhere. She lives near New Haven, Connecticut. And Joan, we're so happy you could join us tonight for Conversation with Kay. It's really wonderful to have you here. And Ria de Guzman is a poet, artist, and community organizer. She is currently an Ada Comstock non-traditional student at Smith College, where she has been recognized for her contributions to writing and advocacy. Her professional interests lie at the intersections of creativity, socio-emotional impact, and community engagement, and she is the founder and head facilitator of the Northampton Literary Society. Her work has appeared in the Kelsey Review, the Voices and Visions Journal, and has been featured with Trenton's JKC Gallery. Ria is also one of our amazing interns, core interns at the Poetry Center. Ria's just designed a series of really awesome stickers that we're gonna get sorted out and have as giveaways at the Poetry Center. And it is such a pleasure to be able to work with Ria and have them here in the Poetry Center as much as possible. Please welcome to the podium, Ria. Where's Ria? Oh, there.
Hello. I'm so pleased that I get to do this intro. I was just talking to some folks about how all day today I have been in Iver Poetry Zone, from my class discussions to other events, and now I'm here and I get to tell you guys about how much I really truly did enjoy this book. So when I first read Kay Iver's short film starring my beloved's red Bronco, I experienced something not especially rare when interacting with great poetry, which is that cascade of goosebumps that washes over you when something in the work strikes a note that is pure and matched exactly to some resonant frequency in our most urgent selves. So usually that wears off, but this book it didn't. Practically every single page I turned was just charged with that shiver. That comes from what I think it's different for every reader, but for me, it comes from those moments of like really profound recognition, something said in a rhythm that is perfectly suited to the statement, like pretty much every closing line of every poem in this book. Shiver. Images, the images gripping and intense simplicity, a ballet costume shoulder strap, an engraved name on a class ring, and of course the Bronco in its many iterations. And then you get their incredible surrealistic lyrics, like a fruit, quote, fruit bored with sinless afternoons and aching for teeth. Epiphany, musicality, and precision. These poems strike all of these notes and then do more. Selected by Tahima Jess for the Ballard Spar Prize for Poetry, the collection defies categorization. At its center is an impossible grief, the speaker's complex relationship with a trans beloved who died before transitioning. Conventional narratives about loss and remembrance are generally insufficient, and especially in this case. This book there then responds to that by resisting the insistence that biting pain of loss resolve into a state of dulled acceptance, which is not to say that the book resists acceptance. It functions as an existential atlas that carries the reader through grieving landscapes that constantly contradict, yet somehow exist directly adjacent to each other. Acceptance is there until it is interrupted by the irresistible longing that runs through this book, then re-entered into through just beautiful memorialization that then itself gives way to fantasy and fairy tale. These poems manage to ground themselves in the present reality of loss, with the struck-through titles, personal history rewrites, fantasy poems. I'm referring to poems like A Fantasy with No Secrets and A Fantasy in Which There Is Nothing for Us to Survive, fantasies of where things are not, where missing things are conjured into now without dishonoring the truth of their absence. This nature of the speaker's relationship with their lost beloved is equal parts devastating and liberating. And the refusal of this neat resolution in the poems does so much work also as a kind of political anti-elegy right now. The refusal to simply mourn without indicting the conditions that led to a loss of life that can be directly linked to societal malfeasance and the harms of transphobia. And it's so intensely significant when we've witnessed the unprecedented legal legislative attacks on trans experience, over 500 anti-trans bills introduced in state legislature over the past year alone. The poems in this book act against this, not just in the fact that they refuse to allow the lost beloved fade into a void of non-existence, but inhabits a loss that stands before the systems that refuse to acknowledge trans lives are worthy of recognition and mourning. In Anti-Elegy, Kay writes, if you were still dying like the rest of us, I wouldn't tell a young ghost how far we've come, as if I believed how far we've come was enough. Some might argue that in times like now, the act of art making is a distraction and impossibly inadequate against the power imbalances that we face, but this collection demonstrates the opposite by fiercely engaging poetry's power to package the kind of intimacy and vulnerability that is in some ways the best means of delivering that uniquely penetrating frequency of frank articulation of pain, resilience, and hope. Each of these poems is an unsilencing. Each read of each poem is an unsilencing that can erode the isolation. It does so through candor and quiet urgency, the speaker's voice holding not only their owns and missies, but so many that can speak together against a state of pervasive threat that leverages individual silence and writing, and this writing does so with really an easy grace and strength. So as we gather here tonight to hear Kay Iver read from the extraordinary collection, I invite you to allow both the sorrow that permeates these pages and the fierce tenderness and the testimony to beauty, the beauty, complexity, and undeniable reality of trans lives and our lost beloveds. So please join me in welcoming Kay Iver.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Matt. I was every bit as joyed to meet you at the book fair. I don't know if y'all have been to the book fair at AWP, but it can feel like middle school all over again. Can you hear me okay? Is that good? Okay, great. I just want to invite everyone maybe to find the edges of your body and think about what's in there tonight, and just think about or invite whatever grief you have that wants to be felt, or any feeling that you don't really want to feel. It might need your attention. This might be a okay place to give it that. We'll start with the epigraphs. There's one by Oliver Baez-Bandorf, who just came out with a book this year called Consider the Rooster, and it's really beautiful. There must be a girl. There has always been a girl. There must be a boy. There has always been a boy. There must be a ghost. They must be hungry. And the second one by Lord Byron, How Should I Greet Thee? Okay. First poem, Nostalgia. The word nostalgia is crossed out. In the beginning, yes, a garden, as lush as you're imagining. Even the grass grows mid-oak. In the beginning, the grass and the trees and birds are already tired of their assigned names. They consider rebellion. The green blades think of rounding. Feathered wings dream of swimming a backstroke, but someone assigned woman beats them to it by eating something edible. In the beginning, a hospital in North Mississippi, a mother holds her new baby, calls this day her happiest. The baby is you. The mother is surprised you're here with only a heart murmur. She says, having lived through her bloodstream's birth control and later tequila, you must be a fighter. In the beginning, there's much holding. There's not enough holding. In the beginning, a father says you're beautiful because you are. In the beginning, you're 3 years old and crying too loud on the beach because a surprise wave knocked you down and the salt won't leave your mouth. The salt won't leave your eyes, your hands, each fingerprint. In the beginning, while you're still walking down the shore, still crying, a father slaps you on the thigh, hard. You stop crying in your purple one piece. Here, a beginning. A small house on a wooded hill where dogwoods bloom when they're supposed to. If you're wondering what the cardinals would do for you besides moving bright color around, you're 12. If you're wondering what parts of life are survivable, you're 14. There, the beginning, a boy fully clothed in flannel and denim. He tells you, only you, that he's a boy. You understand. He knows nothing of your uncertainty about lip gloss, what makes you a girl. He might not understand. In the beginning, he looks at you the way someone must have when you were born. Here, in the forest, a ripeness both of you can eat but somehow shouldn't. A fruit bored with sinless afternoons and aching for teeth. Oops. Okay, here's a poem about the boy. For Missy, who never got his new name. I hear the stars are sentient, which gives me hope for the nitrogen feeding your grass. Even more for the mole ending the day's burrow in your skull. I'm told your atoms are still atoms. Somewhere you're sitting by a pool picking apart the physics of swimming. In the hallway of a large high school in Mississippi, you're again the sophomore guarding my classroom entrance with a letter like an undiscovered prince. I've resumed my surprise at desire I thought was for cave dwellers. This is where I go wrong. I loved a body you didn't. My younger self wants the word to rebuild rather than stop at the blonde hair, middle part, low ponytail, the impressive manliness with which your hips carried utility denim. I tell my young self to flatten her memory's landscape. Picture 2 scars, liberating a torso, a first name that doesn't hiss. Soon, a Brooklyn apartment. We pretend it finally happened for you. It really did. All right, everybody, this is Cleo. We're gonna read Boy Meets Girl, boys in brackets.
Missy. Okay. Tell me again about the courtyard.
It was August, 7:30 a.m. and sunny, my first day of high school, 1996. I saw you standing with my friends and wondered if you had any in your grade. A friend whispered, he's a tomboy. She said you played 5 sports. A little overkill.
Who spoke first?
I asked your name. I knew your name.
I handed you some candy.
I took some, saved some.
I walked you to homeroom.
We had many questions.
When did you know?
There were days I thought you stayed home. Then you appeared by my classroom door with a note. We passed several each day. One said, I like good conversationalists. Another, I don't know what to wear to the dance. My mom's on my case about my style. Another, I'm sorry about Travis. You deserve better. You signed them all, Reese.
When did you know?
We were walking down the stairs, and on the landing, my wrist button fell off.
I rolled up your sleeve and looked at you.
Your eyes grew large. They made me think of stained glass at my church, how something pure must be burning through all that blue. I wanted to stay there, standing in holy shock.
You said,
What?
and I said,
Nothing. Great job. Wonderful. This is the follow-up poem to that, called Fantasy with No Secrets. Instead of staring at each other on the landing, you touch my face and lean in. My mouth opens to soft possibility. I go home wearing your class ring, that cold silver, lab-grown sapphire, exactly my size. The next morning, my mother wakes me, picks up my hand, reads your engraved name out loud. The steep angles of her jaw sharpen when she says I better treat you right. All right, this is called Boombox Ode. Enjoy the silence. Any Depeche Mode fans? Okay, right. Oh, I know we are up in age. Yeah, so obviously I grew up in Mississippi and really wanted to be a New York queer, one of the club kids of the 90s. But alas, all I had was my boombox. And this is a poem about a literal thing that really happened. We would call one another on our landlines and listen to the radio at songs playing at the exact same time. Yeah. Silence is also a theme because, yeah, we weren't actually, this was during a time when we weren't actually allowed to talk to one another. Boombox Ode, enjoy the silence. A landline lets me dance with you. My one deck and your two deck are dialed to 98.5 FM without an echo. If we speak aloud, this miracle of fiber wire and radio wave, harmony could split. From our speakers, soft synth, a bass line, a choir reverbing, a guitar riff that rises and falls, asks and answers. I can't see your movement, the bedroom you're quiet in. Somewhere, bodies like ours are pulsing under the same pink neon to the same words like violence break. Torsos like ours are touching, and strangers watch only because they're gorgeous. Let me pretend you're back in my bedroom before my mother found us. You've risen from the pine floor and pulled me up. You want me to stand for this. Let me pretend all I've ever wanted, all I've ever needed is here. Tell me that'll be us soon. Okay. Okay, this is for the mediums, intuits, and psychics in the room. Love you all. This is called A Medium Performs Your Visit. You are, according to her, whispering candy through her mouth, and suddenly I remember why so many have a sweet tooth for belief. I'm waiting for class in the high school courtyard where we met and where you offered me an open pack of Reese's Pieces. I took several, closed my mouth around yellow number 5, where it steeped until homeroom. Even then, you were looking everywhere for a new name, signing all of your notes Reese. So when the medium looks up from her black tablecloth and says, candy, I almost believe your mouth is her mouth. Like I almost once believed a God could hold me with old words. That was during a time when you, a blonde boy, forced to call himself a girl, stood in my driveway under a glazed moon, saying, one day you won't be scared, which meant one day my mouth would touch the mouth our church couldn't categorize. Right now, I'm arguing with belief again. The everywhereness of candy, how easily anyone can recall stories of hard and soft sugar playing a supporting role. I'm writing this down, hoping you'll see it and argue back. Remind me that before we met, I turned the pages of our junior high yearbook and stopped at a landscape spread of an ice cream social and you, the one closest to the camera, holding up a Snickers bar with both hands and an ad-ready wink. Say it again, Reese. Prove me wrong. Any dancers in the room? All right. Did y'all ever go to ballet camps or dance camps? Yeah, okay. So you know what I'm writing into. This one, this fifth position, intrusive thoughts at ballet camp. This one was at Nashville Ballet. I don't know if y'all have been that far down. Oh, you have. Okay, so you've been to the studio. Okay. Okay, that's where I had my mental breakdown. It's great. It's great. And I was like, oh my God. Well, they would always talk about how the Boston one was so good, and it is, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 14, those of us who struggle with depression, that can be a time when it comes up. And so I didn't know what was happening, but I was grateful for Beethoven and ballet, as a container. All right, so first position, or no, this is fifth. So this is what it looks like. Yeah, it's great for the knees. Okay. You were practicing in, what? Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, you were practicing an adagio and Moonlight Sonata played from a live piano, guiding the mind to a thought that hovered over your leg extensions, and you waited for it to pass the way thoughts do. It followed you out of the mirrored room, down the hall, through the house of your longest dream yet. This will be your mind now, and doctors will want the thought's content as if the content were scarier than its frequency. Tell them it's a voice, because a rule of dance is the body's every move gets a name, though there's none for this technically. You can hear only today's piano and your feet landing together in opposite directions, and right now you think your head is the only one needing a blow from the floor to forget itself, just a beat when every beat carries an underbeat now and now and now, and this is your mind now. Okay. This is, all right. This is a sister poem to the title poem, a short film starring my beloved's living body. Open with the 2-lane highway, the ice truck and the ice, your elbow resting on the driver's side window. Zoom in on the toned forearm, the goldenrod rushing by. Missy, our audience can see you now. Show them the gas station delivery where a drunk lady screams about your good looks because there's no original way to say a man is beautiful, and the lady really did scream. Our audience will believe us, and they won't. They'll say people this lovely are only in films. No one with lips this pillowy needs to deliver ice. And here you are, lifting bags and saving up for a weekend in Memphis at the Motel 6. There's no time for dialogue about class or gender. No room to signal that your time with goldenrod is limited. Your time awake is limited. Look how awake you are, how the facial bones move with perfect alignment under the dermis. Cut to the motel, leaving its light on for your red Bronco. Now the motel's dark interior. Now the bed nearest the window, where you and a just out of high school date can finally make contact after years of parentally imposed silence. I'm sorry. This film can't access your interior. Your date is the only one directing her memory. Your date is me. My memory is the shower scene already zoomed in on your face. Open your eyes again. Look directly at me. Hold the camera's gaze through the falling water as if this were our last frame. Missy, this is our last frame. Body is the only good word for body. I'm afraid of home's hunger for yours, but off camera, the interstate is waiting and my lines are, let's go. All right, this one's called Anti-Elegy. It's one I wish weren't still relevant, as Matt was just talking about, and I I'm really grateful to Cameron Awkward Rich. Any Cam fans in the room? Yeah. I teach the arc of the elegy in a lot of classes and workshops, and I think what Cam did for the anti-elegy tradition was pretty profound. Yeah, a quote that stays with me every day, especially right now, is the trouble with elegy is that it calls the dead to rise. It asks the dead to rise, and who am I? No, it asks the dead to come back. That's the quote. And who am I to say rise? If you were here, the Mississippi would still run south, would still drop its griefs into the Gulf, where our friends would still swim in summer. Water would touch us like water. If you were here, the river that is your body would not move magically. While it emptied from the bladder's headwaters, from tear ducts and pores, public officials would still turn the fact of your body into arguments. You might have struck the impossible. Surgery, a new name, your own boat, and someone beautiful to name it after. Someone beautiful and their baby. From one dorm room landline to another, your wish list sounded like a fairy tale, like growing a merman's fin between classes. I thought we were playing pretend when you said, "Good night, Tinkerbell," and I said the boy's name you wanted secret. Even then, strangers spoke to a boy when speaking to you. That was 20 years ago. The list already a plan, already gliding an undercurrent, sprung 20 years before that. If you were here, still drinking cold tea in a cold diner, men in state capitol conference rooms hours down the highway would still draft bathroom laws for adults. Your mother would still sneak taffeta and silk in your closet of fatigues and say she loved you. I wouldn't reimagine your capillaries assembling. If you were still dying like the rest of us, I wouldn't tell a young ghost how far we've come as if I believed how far we've come was enough. Wouldn't worry about who else gets more than 27 years. Your body wasn't a national average. You wanted more than safety. But I didn't wake sore in the jaw until I heard the numbers, until a nation, an entire nation, couldn't offer an alibi. You see, my grief is righteous and problematic. It floods the last four walls holding you and begs for time. It hurls absurd reasons from a future. A handful of trans film stars humanizing a handful of trans characters. Better doctors. My grief says it's helping, but argues only for me. The relief, the microsecond of relief when I achieve the unexpected and hope you find out. This means I forget you're gone. This makes my grief a loose dam. Still, I talk to water that unrivered your body for dirt. I float fantasies of dirt that holds us up longer. I say to the water, if you were here, you'd be here. So I've lived in Andover for a little while, about a year and a half now, and everyone asks me how I like it here, and I always say I love it. As a kid, I really wanted to be a New Englander. I thought, you know, after being in social studies, that like the North were the good guys. Like I had, you know, very like simplistic ideas about which side I wanted to be on, and everything, you know, and yeah. This is a reimagining of having been a New England kid with New England parents. Family of origin rewrite. My father teaches ethics at a university. My mother teaches ethics at a university. They save their money, buy a large bungalow in Connecticut. They continue saving enough to support the San Francisco AIDS Foundation and their baby. They read the news and wish kindness into our laws. One of them will say, Sweden hasn't been to war since 1812. The other says you can start a business in Sweden and get free health care. They're excited about my arrival. They remain calm. When midnight cries wake them. My father waits for my mother to heal before asking for sex. She's good at saying no. She throws meditation and exercise and intense therapy at her trauma. Still goes to AA. When wrong, she promptly admits it. Every night she arrives home from the university. Her soft, low voice builds a replica in my throat. She wears minimal makeup, cuts her nails down because who needs the fuss? When I walk into her room and see my father, I continue walking in. When my father and I leave the house, lots of women introduce themselves. When we get back, he tears their numbers over the trash. On weekends, my father and I dig in the dirt. I watch him plant lilac bulbs around the spruce. He lets my small hand pack the ground, affirms it as help. When my father puts me to bed with true stories of him sewing clothes for new mothers in Ukraine, I fall asleep fast. Right. So glad there's a clock up here. When did we start, though? Do I have... Okay. Maybe I'll read just 3 more then. Okay. All right, this one is called God. Let's see, what do you need to know about it? Yeah, it's about a funeral that shouldn't have happened. And it relies on a lot of, like, I don't know, maybe some insider baseball knowledge of the Old and New Testament. But the 2 verses I'm epigraphing here are from Romans and Matthew. So there's one, so we, being many, are one body in Christ, and everyone members one of another. And the second one is, if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off and cast it from thee. What does that say about a body, right? A body in Christ. There are parts that might need cast. I don't know. I didn't write it. All right, God, lowercase. At my beloved's burial, I can't see his body, only carnations. I hear your name and my beloved's in the same sentence. I didn't come to meet you, whose men are everywhere, calling themselves your body and singing about their own beautiful blood, which I've never seen, but am willing to bet isn't as beautiful as my beloved's jacket, full of his skin cells and waiting to reincarnate from a Goodwill medium rack. In the room of my beloved's body, no pictures, only carnations. They spill over his box like misplaced grief. Underneath them, he dances with strangers at a gay bar 2 hours from town, unbuttons his uniform in a desert barrack an ocean from town, leans on his red Bronco, smoking through a leaf in the middle of town where too many exes are watching the club door. Lord, in the room of my beloved's body, your men won't admit the fact of his body. In the foyer, 1 room away, a decade-old portrait of him in pearls and a black dress. His expression proof your goodness doesn't extend where it counts. The stories I hear about my beloved as mistaken as your miracles. Lord, when I loved you, I didn't know so many of your men would exile so many of us. When I was 10, I wrote volumes of letters addressed to the Lord and warned classmates about the rapture and called televangelist hotlines for assurance the devil's lava wasn't waiting beneath sleep. Later, my beloved took your side in debates about your existence. If he was right, you owe him a confession. Tell him how your body wouldn't take your advice, how its right hand severed an entire demographic. Look at him in his new eyes. Say what you can redeem and won't. Okay, there's one I'm trying to find and it's not quite. Where are you? Title poem. Ah, there you are, page 53. You're following along. Short film starring my beloved's red Bronco. I want the impossible. Another genre. Time for opening shots of gravel. A small brick house where my beloved comes of age. McCullough Boulevard. Its elevated loops taking him east, away from the flat suburbs. I want you to see his soccer cleats thrown in the back, fitted for a girl's 9. The girls on his team deserve an entire storyline. The one in the passenger seat trying not to look at him, surprised by her want. Her mother, who knows and doesn't care, deserves a bigger part, at least a stylist. Let the mothers who do care, who punish their daughter's desire with exile, let their punishment remind you that choosing genres is a luxury, not for the queers washing their own used cars. Shots this film can afford. Mud on the wheels, abundant soap and water, more mud. The bumper sponged by my beloved's right hand. A night drive, a gaping moon. Watch my beloved reach for the knob. Let the moody synth of I'm on fire swallow the view. You won't see flames. Nothing that burns a long time. Still, I need you to stay with it, this wide frame of a salvage yard, our Bronco's new home of rust eating red. Watch everything I love now, flattening. Okay, this is the longest reading I've given. I usually do like 10 to 15 minutes, so. But I'm still up here breathing. Wow, I can really do it. That wasn't. You didn't have to. You didn't have to clap for that. Oh, okay. So I'll read the last 2 poems in the book. Missy asks me what the next century's like. More of us are on TV. I've met the trans people who own a bar and bookstore in Madison, Wisconsin. I have shaken their hands. An 11-year-old from my queer youth club says her hobby is trans liberation activism. Some of us still die. More of us want to. Undergrads are performing 90s nostalgia. I saw a freshman carrying a boombox playing Boombastic. For half a second, I thought it was your red Bronco. I saw the stoplight where we danced from our bellies like Shaggy. This is a trauma response. Ford reissued the Bronco last year. The drivers are exactly our age, still flanneled and anxious. Strangers have read poems about you and published them in national journals. Strangers have read poems about you and offered me a fellowship to live in Madison, where I've never felt so comfortable around strangers. Climbing fake boulders indoors is scarier than memories. I'm told the past won't leave parts of my body. An androgynous climber with many muscles coaches my past up the wall. Trust your big toe. Reach. At a public reading, someone with frosted hair says, "Thank you for bringing Missy to life. When you were alive, I would have gendered them. You would love the lakes here. When I look up from my campus desk, I see sailboats. I hold many people I don't know responsible for your death. They love us here, now. Right now, they love us here." Okay. All right, this one's called Because You Can't. Yeah, raise your hand if you have grief. Okay, here's a trick I learned. When you have joy, just grab extra, like all you can for the person that you've lost, because they can't, that's what this poem is about. It's like a reverse pregnancy, like you're eating for two with joy. Just get it in there, Okay, it may not work for you. It works for me though. Because you can't. I stand in front of paintings a long time and think about the bones once belonging to you, and how Egon Schiele could line a body into movement. Because you no longer have a shape, I've made a practice of nearness. A hawk lets me stroke her mid-flight. I let comets land in my mouth when they're small enough. My lover pushes all their weight on me because I asked. They flatten me into astonishment. Because nothing can astonish you, I tempt what's alive by doubting I could love it more. It's a neat trick. When I use it, raccoons visit often, their fingers closed around mud, older than you. Missy, this is me moving on. There's a noon rain to get caught in, and many clavicles to behold. I wish you could see this one, tilting across a century. Thank you all. It's good.
Hi. I just want to kind of give everybody a second to recover. If that was your first time hearing Kay read, I've had the honor and the privilege of hearing them read a few times, and it always brings up like a very deep well of emotion when I listen, and for different reasons each time, and different poems, which is really cool. So I wanted to start, I think, with something that you said at the end, and also something that we were talking about before you started reading. And then talk about one of the poems that kind of addresses that. If I was more organized, I would have it right in front of me. So something that you said at the top of the stairs when we were standing there just like kind of in awe. First of all, when this many people show up for poetry, it's like some sort of miraculous event for poets. because all of us have read to a room with like one person. Um, so, so it's very exciting. Thank you for being here and like showing up for us and showing up for poetry. Yeah, yes. So something you said at the top of the stairs was that maybe there's more to life than suffering.
Sorry. Yeah. So, some of these poems, when I was writing them, were a conversation with my younger self. And right now, that my life is very different than when I was writing these poems. I'm having a conversation with a person writing these poems, and it's that maybe I said maybe we're not here to suffer all the time. You know, yeah, things are different. My life is better in so many ways. My micro is pretty good, in many ways. Yeah. And I'm bewildered by that. I still don't quite believe it. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does, and I'm sorry that I misquoted you.
No, you didn't.
I did a little bit.
You did it.
Yeah, so there was a poem that you read. There was a poem that you read where you were talking about joy, and being able to access joy, and also, being able to like grab joy for the people that aren't here. So I know that like people in the audience you're studying different things. Everyone is here for different reasons, but I'm just wondering if there's anything that you can share about how those two things can coexist, right? How grief, sorrow, and joy can coexist, or how two things can be true. That we can experience two things, that it doesn't have to be one thing in isolation.
Yeah, I don't think it should be. Studies are bearing out that emotional diversity is healthy for us. Like, even if we're really happy, it's actually not that great for us to be only happy for a long period, like too long. Like, we need a crowd. We need like a crowd of people inside of us, or personalities, right? That's what I think of when I think of like holding different emotions. Yeah, people in complex and non-complex grief are laughing one moment and crying the next. And we know the kind of binary culture that we live in. And when I was growing up, Gen X people especially, no, I love you. I'm sorry. But like, the cool Gen Xers right above me would always talk about like, you can only be one thing, and if you're not, you're a poser, which is why it took me so long to come out as trans. Because unlike Missy, I didn't know what I was. Missy always knew what he was, and I thought that's the only way you can do this. And yeah, same thing with emotions. I'm not, grief, joy, anger. I'm not afraid of any of those. Yeah, but I'm also not. I don't need to be stuck in one either, or wedded to one. And I find that I'm most stuck in one when I'm not allowing myself to feel it completely, I would say even surrender. But we don't have a lot of public spaces where that's welcome, like where our complexity of experience is welcome. Yeah. And so that's something we have to find in ourselves and among people who will welcome all of us, our whole selves. Yeah. Sorry to sound like pop psychology, but I don't know, whatever. But yeah.
So I remember hearing you read some of these poems very shortly after the book was published. And we were on a panel together right around the same time that my book was published. And something that we both write about is survival of suicide loss. So I know for myself, since my first book came out, that my relationship to the book has changed. In fact, I often don't want to read from the book because the poems, interestingly, have gotten more difficult to read aloud, especially. I don't want to hear myself reading them anymore because they bring up what like the acute version of the grief that I was experiencing at the time. So I'm wondering if you could speak to the way that your relationship to the poems in the book and the book itself have changed since you wrote them.
Oh, yeah. This is tough. This is a tough moment for me. Yeah, I'll just be real. I don't, it's hard for me to, it's hard for me to read them. I'm really grateful that I get to, and I'm grateful that I get to write something that, you know, kids in Mississippi are needing right now. Like, I just never thought that I could be of service that way, just by being real with a page, you know. And, you know, I like to have some measure of as someone who was a dancer in my first 20 years, you know, I like to feel like I'm wearing some mask on the stage, but I can't right now. I'm too upset, you know, about what's happening, about the people we're losing and will lose. And yeah, and so I guess I just feel vulnerability around that. Like, I don't know what we're doing as poets if we can't be ourselves, but I still, you know, I worry, you know, I worry that it's, that I'm too much, or like I'm just too depressed or too in grief or too whatever, when I'm coming to read about this. But it is difficult for me right now, you know. It's difficult, and, you know, but it was much more difficult when I didn't have this outlet and nobody was talking about him ever. You know, I would rather talk about him, and yeah, I'd rather talk about Next Benedict too, you know, than not talk about them. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So something that this is going to seem a little disconnected, I think, maybe, but something that I think is really interesting about writing is that some of it for me has to be done in isolation, like in complete and utter solitude. I don't want anyone talking to me. I don't want even be around other writers. I just, there's a big part of the process that for me is done in complete isolation and solitude. So at the same time, I'm a human being first, right, and need community and get a lot from community. So I'm wondering if you could speak to your relationship to solitude and your relationship to community and how that's helped you to develop your literary life and also just evolve as a person.
Yeah, I mean, well, I was an only child, so, and all of the imagery of the book is real. I grew up on a wooded hill in Mississippi. It was really far away from all the other neighborhoods. So, yeah, I didn't have any, yeah, no siblings. So it was just me and the woods and television and, you know, pop music. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little bit forced to be alone a lot again. And it is difficult and so necessary, because when I wrote a lot of this book, I was also very alone. It was the first year of COVID, and I was trying to finish my dissertation for my PhD, and I didn't know any of this would happen from it. I was just trying to get the book done so I could graduate and then maybe get a job. You know, and so I didn't have like a real queer community until my FSU days, and yeah, and after that, you know, there was like a year and a half of just being in my apartment, seeing a friend outside every now and then, and now my community has grown so much. There's a lot of friends in my phone up and down the East Coast where I live now. I live in Andover, and writing this book has opened up trans community for me. I mean, when I wrote this, I knew, yeah, Missy was the only trans person I knew in real life. when I wrote this book. And I dated someone who was trans. He was the second. And then I met a lot of people in recovery rooms who were trans. And yeah, so I really need my buddies. And they've helped me stay alive. They've helped me not just with their love and care, but just through modeling self-care and like just self-affirming action. I've been taught how to go throughout my day every day on my own. Because of my community, I'm able to hold solitude now for a long time, if that makes any sense.
It does, because I think, like, in order to survive solitude, you have to know that your community is there.
That's it. Yeah.
When you move out of solitude, so it does.
Yeah. Yeah. I needed new attachment figures, and I'm so glad I have them now. Yeah.
So here's another experience that I've had, actually, with 2 of the books that I've published. After the books were published, I wished that there had been another poem in them. Like, I realized that there was another poem that maybe belonged, especially in Night Swim,
Yeah.
and then the opportunity was gone. Do you know what I mean? I'm wondering if there are any poems that you wish that you had written for the book.
Yeah, and I don't like to finish anything, you know. And to me, art's very fluid. Even the best of art, you know, it could have been different. And any piece of art could be different so easily or change so easily. And a lot of artists I know feel like they're never done as well. I heard of one poet who still reads revisions of poems that were published in books years and years ago, and poems everyone loves, you know. I can't remember who that was. But yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have done more with maybe the Bronco as a horse, you know, like there is an idea of wildness and what we've done with gender to kind of, you know, unwild it. But yeah, I might have done more with that. But I don't know. I'm also happy with it now. You know, I'm also like, after a year with it, a year and a half, I mean, it's the one thing I feel like I've made that I just feel like, oh, I made something beautiful. And and just like folk art and folk songs, like I love the imperfections of those. And yeah, I don't know if I'm pro like perfect poem or perfect book.
I like
You know?
that. I like that answer, because now I feel
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anyone, this is just like, I'm curious about this question. Is there anyone that you, like a writer that you are just a fan, like such a big fan of that you, I don't know, like break out in hives when you see them,
Yeah.
or you just can't like come up with the courage to speak to that person?
Oh, I wish I were. I'm writing an essay right now about
Are you really?
about just how brave I was at 23, because I was at this concert and I gave this musician a poem of mine.
You gave who a poem?
This musician, I'm not going to say who it is, but it's like if I didn't get it. And yeah, we'll talk about it later. But yeah, my friend, it's actually an essay right now I'm writing about my friendship with the poet Kaveh Akbar. And but I showed him this one scene where so it's one of our favorite musicians, and the essay is about how we came together and our shared interests and intersections of you know, addiction recovery and severed belonging, all that stuff, you know, how you do as poets. But I was like, I can't believe I did that. But I said, I still want to send him both of our books, so maybe nothing has changed, you know. But yeah, I've been really brave. I don't know. Something happens. I think because one thing Missy has taught me, both in real life and the experience of losing Missy, is that we're all going to die. You know, like, why not just tell people you appreciate them as much as you can? And so that grief has thrust me into adoring people verbally.
Thank you. Who are you reading now? Who are you reading? Like, what are you loving?
Oh my goodness. So I read a lamentation prayer. Right now I'm reading a lot of prayers. I'm writing prayers. I really love Jean Valentine. I don't know. Coming back to the higher powers, you know, and reading the spiritualists a lot. Yeah. Yeah, Jean Valentine's really doing it for me right now. Sheng Yang Feng, he's more of a Buddhist. You know, he has beautiful, meditative, humble poems. Writers who are writing with a lot of humility and surrender, I think. Yeah.
Okay, I think maybe one or two more questions. What's that?
That's fine, yeah.
Okay. What are you, well, this is a big one. What are you working on now? Other than the essay, is there anything else? Or you can talk more about the essay.
Yeah. Poetry's really hard for me. I was telling Matt in the car that one thing testosterone has done for me, which I've been on for like 3 years now, or 2.5, is that it's made poetry harder. My brain has changed, and it changed really fast. My body was very sensitive to it. I think it was just like soaking it up because it just, really wanted it. But yeah, I'm a little less emotionally haunted, a little less, just a little. I mean, I'm still myself, but just, it's dialed down. Yeah, my obsessiveness is dialed down. I'm much more present than I used to be, and that's made my coming to poetry a lot harder, because I used to come to it as just a need for some order, you know, like Gregory Orr talks about poetry as the threshold between order and disorder. Like, that's what poetry is. And now that there's a little more order in my life, I've been, just writing a lot more loosely, and I'm writing a memoir right now, a memoir and essays, and all about the same subject, which is, I would say, addiction and recovery. And I'm also writing a collection of poems about the same subject. But, it's, they're just very different, they're happier. I don't know how I can write about joy yet and make it interesting. I think animals are a way into it. I'm writing about animals a lot right now. But,
I can't wait to read the memoir, and also, poems about addiction and recovery. I think that's going to be amazing. So I'm very excited about that. Okay. This is a question I was speaking with someone at dinner about. Have you found that because of the themes in your work, that after you published the book, that you had a lot of people reaching out to you? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So readers, who, maybe survivors of suicide loss.
Yeah, and I'm so glad.
And how do you navigate that? Like, how do you determine how to respond? And I had a very difficult time with that.
Yeah. I was warned about this. I was warned by writers that people you don't know would tell you their stories, and you just, it's up to you to have whatever boundaries you want, to put up whatever boundaries you want. You don't have to take it, or you don't have to sit and listen if you don't want to. And I don't know. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for them myself, because that's what I'm going to think about on my deathbed. I'm not going to be thinking about the prize the book won. I'm going to be thinking about the people who it reached, who I've been able to reach. Yeah. And I'm really, really grateful that, you know, mothers whose children have committed suicide reached out to me when that is not a grief that I know. I'm grateful for that connection. Yeah, I mean, it's part of, for me, it's part of that expansion, you know, that expansive community, like this mutuality that in my life has been very needed. Yeah.
Okay, one more question, and then Kay is going to be signing books upstairs or downstairs? Right here, right here. They're going to be signing books. I think, you know, the last question I have is, this is obviously a really like absurd and horrifying historical moment that all of us are experiencing. And I think, you know, for transgender members of the transgender community, and also for those of us who love members of the transgender community or who are parenting members of the transgender community, you approach everything in your writing with so much tenderness and resilience. And when I think about someone who is able to navigate that, the kind of darkness that we're navigating right now, and do it with grace and strength, you are one of the people that I think of, one of the very first people that I think of. So I'm wondering if you can give any guidance to the rest of us with a little less grace, such as myself, and, you know, just trying to walk through this landscape right now to survive it, to not give it more power than it already has.
Yeah. This is so important. It's really, really important for me to check where my backlash energy is going. You know, I just don't want to misdirect my backlash energy. I want it to be towards systems and not people. You know, I think that's really, really important. Again, we're all going to die. We don't know when we're going to die. I just think it's really, really important to love one another. And I know, I'm sorry to sound like an 80s pop song, but that was like what I grew up on. But, and to, put pressure on how we love ourselves, you know, how we love others. It's not comfortable sometimes to be nicer to a stranger in a grocery store who, you know, may have voted against my safety, may have not, but if he wants to be nice to me, I'm not going to, I'm not going to just live in my resentment. I'm not going to stew in resentment toward the people in my life who want to love and care about me, and vice versa, you know.
Do you have any suggestions for how to do that?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I wrote this from so I wrote this book, you know, feeling very much like an underdog, you know, and feeling like I knew exactly who my oppressors were. Yeah, I don't know how, but that's why I come to this, you know, that's why I come to both community and my relationship with myself with a lot of humility, because there's just a lot about other people I don't know, you know. If there is a single person in my life who wants me dead or wants to commit me harm, obviously, like, that's where my backlash energy goes, you know. But yeah, I don't know a lot of Republican senators in my life, so I think I'm just gonna be nice to people on the sidewalk and pet their dogs, and yeah, unless you're mean to me, I'm just gonna be soft. Yeah.
Thank you, Kay. I love you. I'm so happy that I got to sit down with you. And thank you all once again for showing up for poetry. And please stick around and meet Kay and buy their book and get it signed. Thanks.